Sleepy Hollow Season 3, Episode 10, Incident at Stone Manor. Definitely a fun episode. I really love getting to see Abbie in this one, and just some of the stuff that they played around with I thought was very surprising because they had, we have our initial span with Abbie in the beginning where she wakes up and it's like, I'm in this random place, I don't know where the heck I am. When they showed the whole temple, I was like, oh, she's in the Nether Realm, which is basically where all the bad guys come from in Mortal Kombat. That's what it looked like to me. But it was like, okay, so she's in another realm. She's walking around and stuff, and she finds this well. She finds this cutlass in a tree trunk, and she's just walking all across this place. She's mapping the thing out, and it ends, and she has this really crazy detailed map of like this entire place. It looked really cool. And then we have, of course, everyone kind of in the normal realm. I mean, because we find out that she spent 10 months there, for her it's been 10 months even though it's been about a month and a half or so for everyone else. We find out the time moves very, very quickly. We find out that Abbie doesn't need to eat, sleep, or drink for whatever reason. So she's in this very weird place where it's like, that feels like what Purgatory should have been, but it's not. And I find that very interesting because it's like, man, this feels like, based on that description where it's like, time moves super fast, and you don't need to eat, sleep, or drink or anything like that. You're just there. That feels like true Purgatory to me, and I thought that was really interesting, but it's still not. And her being trapped there for all this time, and she finally gets this attachment to Ichabod when he uses the spell for his astral projection. I thought that was cool. She gets, of course, a little bit of answers as to what the inscriptions meant, which I knew we were going to get that because I was like, when they did that in the mid-season finale and they showed her and it pans back down that hallway, I'm like, there's a bunch of writing and we're going to need somebody to talk about that. So, of course, Ichabod comes in. It's basically a story about our main villain. And, we get a little bit of information. That's how we get the 10 months thing. And Abbie, Abbie has, like, long hair now, which, in, like, a split second, I was like, did she always have long hair? Because it was kind of funny because it just cuts to the next scene. And even with that being a month, I was like, okay, I guess, a month and a half or so, I could see that, if your hair just naturally grows out, if it grows down, I guess I could see that happening. Some people's hair does actually grow a lot faster than other people's hair, and I thought, with a full month, her hair didn't seem like it was that long to me. I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense, but it was 10 months, so I guess she'd been cutting her hair somehow, although it looked perfectly wavy. But I thought it was cool that they did it that way, and it's like she's been trapped there for such a long time. And then finally, when Ichabod finds a spell, like, alright, I can at least find her, and then kind of direct her back to us. Of course, here comes Pandora in her astral form, and it's like, oh, yeah, if you give me the eye, I can get you out of here. It's like, I might not be able to hurt you, and then she cuts Ichabod's tether, and he's sent off randomly somewhere, which fortunately got fixed. Admittedly, I thought it was a little quick because I kind of wanted it to end where she came back and then he was lost, and maybe they just spend one episode and they get him back in the next one. But I was like, okay, I mean, they got him back by the end of this episode, but she's left alone and she still decides to destroy the eye because she's not gonna let the bad guys get it. And I thought that was a really cool moment. And she was like, even though I felt like there were definitely moments where I was gonna go crazy and I've been here alone, for 10 months, even though it's been like a month for everyone else. It doesn't matter to me. And she destroyed the stone, and, she mentioned the chess move, and she said, we call it a sacrifice. And I was like, that was really cool of her character, and she was just like, it doesn't matter, because even if I'm stuck here, at least the bad guys don't have ultimate power. And I thought that was very cool. And, of course, she goes through her little monologue or I guess her fake it's a monologue, but it's like her inner dialogue, I guess, as her and Ichabod talking together. And she realizes that because of the info that Ichabod gave her with the cutlass, that Betsy Ross was in this place, wherever it is. And unfortunately, it didn't go the route that I thought, because in all honesty, I was like, okay, she's in this weird area that's like pseudo purgatory, but not really purgatory. And I was like, alright, seemingly, I mean, her hair was growing, but that doesn't mean she was aging. And I was like, are they gonna, I was like, Betsy Ross, in the current timeline, I thought that would have been very awesome. But it's like, no, she escaped, and Betsy Ross is still, I guess, officially dead in the timeline. But I was like, cause she's in the title. And I mentioned that during the mid-season premiere that she's in the title. Foster is also in the title. And it's like, okay, I feel like they're kind of hinting at something. And I guess the fact that Foster is now on the team also negates the fact that they'd add Betsy Ross, because then they'd have a 6-person team, which personally I think would be very awesome. And they've been close to that before, for sure. But, I guess they just wouldn't, really go that route. But I think it would be really cool, because I love Betsy Ross. She's like, every time she shows up, she's just like super cool and stuff. And we do get to see her in this one in a very different way. But I thought it was kind of cool. I was like, oh man, they're gonna have Betsy Ross. But Abbie just ends up escaping, and she realizes that the cutlass was there because it was meant to be a tether for the rope. She gets out, she wakes up in the water, she basically runs home, pretty much. And so she's back, and she gets Ichabod back, and everything kind of works out in the end. And then we go, to promos for the next episode, which I'm very excited for, because the Kindred has come back, which I was like, that thing just walked off into the fog, so I was waiting for this episode, so I'm looking forward to the next one. But the other half of this story was actually really good as well, or I should say the episode, and that is, of course, Jenny's story. I focus on Jenny because she definitely had like the most crucial points in this episode. For one, she steals the fire. I was about to say firefighter, but she steals the lighter from her father's house and completely screws up Joe, because he's like, oh, he goes to talk to the guy, and he's like, oh, what's your name? And his name's Ezra Mills. And he's like, oh, okay. And it definitely threw him off at the very last second, but he walks off and he's fine. And so seemingly, they don't really talk about it too much, and they kind of only bring it up at like the very end, where he's like, I know this stuff with your dad was kind of bothering you, even though it was just that one little thing, and they still had to go to that house even though she didn't want to talk to him. And then it's like Jenny and Foster, and Jenny just has issues with her, and it's like, oh, the first thing is like, oh, you don't speak French. And it's like, well, I know a pattern. And so she was kind of iffy about giving her the paper, and then she was mad about her final plan of turning the gargoyle, or, kind of drowning the gargoyle in concrete, which was actually a really genius idea. Although I felt both their plans worked, I wasn't 100% sure, because I'm like, you kind of have to know how to make a mixer work, but I guess, twist some knobs, push some buttons, and it was, poof, you got concrete shooting out. But I thought it was very interesting watching Jenny kind of have this issue, because it had nothing to do with Foster whatsoever, because she didn't have an issue with her in the last episode. It was like, Ichabod told him, it's like, you can speak freely. She didn't have a single issue, and it was just like, okay, whatever, here's the map, here's, all the demons and everything. And it was just like, little by little, it seemed to affect her more and more. And she wouldn't do that to Joe, because she cares about Joe way more than, who cares about Foster, this random person now. So I thought that was actually interesting, watching her deal with something. And she mentions how, she blocks off her feelings and stuff, and that's why she didn't tell Joe about her dad and everything, because she's so used to not being close to people. So I liked that idea. I liked her story in this episode, where it was just like, they didn't really spoon feed it to us. They barely even explained it, honestly. It was one of those, you really have to read between the lines sort of things, because she had no issues with Foster, and she had no issues with Joe. It was really about being even near her father again that, was the big issue. And I like that they did it that way, because it was very, like I said, it was bordering on, you have no idea why she's randomly mad, but I think it should have been obvious for the most part, because it was her dad. And they also did the flashback in the opening to recap with Abbie and Jenny talking about their dad and stuff like that. So I think it was fairly obvious for the most part, but they didn't, like spoon feed it to us like that's why she's angry. It seemed like she was just mad at Foster for like no good reason. And it's way easier to target someone that you don't really know that well, compared to, I guess, her boyfriend. I don't know, labels and all that stuff, whatever they decide to do. But it's way easier to target like this random person that you really don't care that much about at all, really. So I kind of like that they did it that way. I thought it was a nice, subtle way to do it, and she kind of deals with that kind of quickly, and it's just like, she acknowledges Foster, and then, like, we all did well and stuff like that. So That was kind of cool, just the way that they kind of played around with that idea. Foster was pretty cool in this episode. She came in with like some insane knowledge, like, oh, my parents were archaeologists and stuff, and she's like, this is made during this time, and French architects, and it was just like, I know this, I know that, I got that done too, and I love the way that they did the mission in this episode, because they didn't have Abbie, they didn't have Ichabod, and I think Ichabod is like the number one thing, because they went through basically the plot structure of an entire episode for the series, which I love, to be personally honest. And it was like Abbie would kind of look up some records and stuff, and Ichabod would take out a full stack of books to learn everything he could about gargoyles. Then they would do like a little bit of things. He'd reference something in the past, some piece of history that you thought you knew but you didn't, like Jefferson was a zombie and stuff like that. Or like I think he said like George Washington was a zombie, stuff like that. And I was like, that's really funny because that's the structure of the show. And we even got our flashback, but it was in letter form, and it was like, all right, so we have Betsy Ross, this other guy, Gargoyle comes in, oh crap, one bullet went off, and then they laughed. And it's like, that's it. And I was like, yeah, that's about it. And it was like 3 to 5 minutes compared to like the 8-minute story from Ichabod, where it's like this happened and that happened. And generally when that happens, it tends to flash back and forth a couple of separate times. It'll be like the main time when he did it during the story, and then they figure it out later on because he remembers something else from the flashback, and it's like, oh, this other thing happened as well. So whenever we get that from Ichabod, that's within the episode. It takes up about, I say that's probably a good 15 minutes of the entire episode when Ichabod tells the story, because you get the initial version, and then we get like kind of the ending sequence where it's like, oh, this other thing happened as well. And then we probably get some obligatory scene as well where he's, in this season at least, he'll be talking with like Betsy Ross and stuff. So I thought it was very cool that they kind of went through the structure and stuff, and they did like, the finger thing and stuff like that. So we got that from Abbie, Jenny, and Joe talking about Ichabod and how he would say things or do things. And during the mission with Foster and stuff, we got somewhat the same structure, but not exactly. So I like the way that they did it. I thought it was really cool to see this big difference where it's like, okay, they don't have any of the normal stuff that they have because Ichabod's going to save Abbie. Of course, Abbie's already in this other place, so we don't really get the flashbacks like we normally do. We don't get the insane amount of information. We got like a little bit, and ultimately they didn't have enough to be like, oh, poof, we got it. This is what we need, and then spell it away and it blows up or melts or something. It's like, all right, it's not working, so let's just dump it and fill it up with concrete and turn it back to stone. And I just like that idea. I was like, that was really fun to see because it was so different than what they normally do. Not that I dislike the normal structure, because it's actually really fun watching Ichabod tell like random weird history stuff, and it's like just crazy compared to what it actually is. So, not that I dislike that or anything, but it was funny that they kind of mocked themselves in this episode. I just thought that was really fun. By the end of this episode, we have our main villain. I totally forgot the name that they've given him, and I think they've only said it maybe like 2 or 3 times, and that was before the mid-season finale. So I really don't remember like what his name is like whatsoever. To be totally honest, I do not remember his name. But our big bad, he takes a ton of power from Pandora. He uses a lot of his power bringing up their home, as she put it, which when that first happened, I thought it was the castle. I thought it was the exact castle that Abbie was in, because it looked like the exact same thing to me, because it was kind of far off in the woods and you can see the entire thing. But I was like, oh, he just brought the castle to the real world, like in this weird mountain area. Wouldn't Abbie be able to just like take off from there? But I guess it was a different castle, but it looked almost identical to me. It was slight variations, but I thought that's what he brought up at first, and I was so confused. I was like, oh, I guess it's not, because they went through the whole episode and it was just like Abbie's still just trapped where she is. So I thought that was interesting, but he uses his power for that, so he's very weakened compared to what he should be. Of course, they lose the power of the eye because Abbie destroys it, so he takes a ton of Pandora's power. And I don't know what he's going to be doing next, because it doesn't focus on him in the promo, but I'm sure he's going to be a big part of this next episode. And he has I'm trying to remember exactly what that is. It was like a part. It was the piece of the box. That's what it was. And so he's doing something with it. And it's like he's either imbuing it with magic, or he's using his power to sap out like the last little bit that's inside of it. But I think he's powering up the box, and he might be rebuilding it. But it seemed like it was just kind of glowing and floating, and that's all I really saw. So not 100% sure where it's going, but I'm looking forward to that now that he has more power, and he's, the main villain anyway, and he's meant to be like the ultimate evil and stuff, at least for now. So we'll see what happens, but I'm looking forward to that. I'm very excited to see what's going to happen now that Abbie's back, which I personally didn't think would actually happen this episode. I thought it would be maybe she'd come back at the end of the next episode is what I was thinking, but now that she's back, we're going to have Foster and her meeting, and her kind of being introduced to the fact that Foster's on the team now. Whatever's going to happen with her going back to the FBI, possibly, because we do see the other guy in the beginning with Foster, but I don't know. I mean, she might go back to the FBI, and I mentioned that during the mid-season premiere that since it's been a month, they're going to have some weird explanations like, oh, where have you been, and how'd you go missing, and all this other craziness. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, even though it won't have like a huge, well, it could have a huge, impact on the main story, but either she's going to be with the FBI again or she won't be, but I think there'll be some way to where she can be with the FBI, but I'm really curious what they wrote for her explanation, because she's going to have to go back, because she can't just be walking around the city doing missions and stuff with the team and, going to the sites like she normally does, if she's not going to go like, hey, I'm not dead, or I haven't disappeared. I'm back again. So really looking forward to that. Looking forward to her meeting Foster, team wise at least. And something that somebody mentioned in my last review is that theory that's going around is that Foster might actually be related to Abbie and Jenny, because in their grandmother's journal or great grandmother's journal, whichever one, there is a family tree and one of the names has Foster on it. So when I read that in my last review in the comments, I thought that was really cool. And personally, I would love to see that kind of come into play, where she is related to them, and she would, like I put in my comment replying to the person, I put that she would kind of be like a third sister to them, or I guess a second sister to each of them, but she'd be like a third sister, character. And I thought that would be kind of cool, and it would kind of show that she, has a bit of serious relevance to these characters, and it's not just like, oh, poof, she's on the team and that's pretty much it. So I'm looking forward to that, because that also kind of goes along the idea of spells and who can do spells and who can be affected by spells and things like that. And they haven't really gone down the route of only certain people can do certain spells, but they might start doing that at some point, like, oh, certain clans made their own types of spells and things like that, and maybe this part of the family can do it, but this part can't. So if they kind of go that route, that kind of opens up an interesting possibility to Foster possibly helping the team in ways that no one else can, because maybe her line in the family is like, even like maybe her line in the family was the most powerful as far as all the witches go and stuff like that. So I think that'll be a good concept. I'm very curious if that's going to be the case, and I feel like that definitely will be the case if they put the character's name in there like that, and it was something on the family tree. So I'm looking forward to that for sure. I hope that they really explore that, and it's not just a coincidence like, yeah, her name's Foster, but it has no relation. I want that to come up. I want them to realize like, oh, we're all we're actually related. You're like a distant cousin of ours or something like that. So hopefully that happens sooner rather than later, because I think that would be really cool, and it might get her to dive deeper into her family history, because it's not like, oh, I've dealt with this weird stuff recently. It's actually in my heritage to have family members that have been involved in sort of just crazy spells and demonic stuff happening around them. And we might get to learn more stuff about Abbie and Jenny's heritage that we don't really know, and that only Foster could find out about herself because of maybe other relatives she has or something like that, that are just as distant from Abbie and Jenny. So I think that would be really cool if they kind of touch on that a lot. I would really love to see that happen because I think it would be an interesting dynamic. But I definitely want to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And, of course, first question, I want to know what you guys think about us getting Abbie back in this episode. And number two is what is going to happen with our big bad. Like I said, I totally don't remember the guy's name. They've said it a couple of times, and that was, the first half of the season. But he's got, I wouldn't say he's at full power, but he has a lot of power. He took enough to, like Pandora's eye was bleeding and stuff, and she looked really pale. So he took a lot of power out of her, and he's working on something with that piece of the box. So I want to know where you guys think that's going to be headed. Is it going to go back to kind of the first half of the season where Pandora just, unleashes random monsters here and there, or is it going to be something way worse? Because I think it'll be worse. He already brought up their home, which could have been a simple thing like, oh yeah, I brought it up just because it's our home. And that seemed like what it was when he first did it. It was just like, oh, it's for you because I love you. So it didn't seem like it had any true evil villain type purpose. It was just kind of like, I want to do it because I love you and you're my wife. And it's pretty much how it seemed. It was just a loving moment, I guess, for Valentine's. Who knows? But whatever he's doing at the end is going to be disastrous, at least temporarily, because they're going to beat him. I don't know if they're going to do it this season, which is something I'm curious about, because we had our stuff with Moloch and the Horsemen and how they kind of did like the middle of the season. They killed Moloch last time, and just the way they do the villains isn't like a normal series where it's like, okay, season one, villain's dead or villain continues on, and then they die at the end of season two. It's like, nope, dead here, and then it switched after that. So curious to see how long these two are going to survive, if Pandora comes out on top, or if they actually kill Pandora and then her husband is there or something like that. But like I said, definitely want to know what you guys think, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.